It's 3:17 a.m. You wake up not from a nightmare, but from a memory, not a vague feeling, not a blur. You remember the exact date, Tuesday, October 12th, 2009. You remember what you wore, what you ate, the song playing in the background, the argument you had, the words you wish you could take back. Now imagine this isn't a special talent. Imagine this is every single day of your life. What if forgetting wasn't possible? What if your mind refused to let go? There are people who don't just have good memories. They have hyperthymesia, also known as highly superior autobiographical memory. They can recall almost every day of their lives in extraordinary detail. Ask them what happened on April 3rd, 2007. They'll tell you the day of the week, the weather, what they felt, and what was on the news. It sounds like a superpower, but here's the real question. Why does the human mind break like this? And is remembering everything actually a curse? Segment 1. The Woman Who Couldn't Forget. In 2006, a woman named Jill Price wrote a letter to neuroscientists at the University of California. She wasn't asking for fame. She wasn't trying to prove she was special. She wanted help. In her letter, she described something that sounded impossible. She claimed she could remember nearly every day of her life since she was 14. Not just big milestones. Not just birthdays or graduations. Ordinary days, Tuesday afternoons, random Wednesdays. The exact emotional texture of a rainy morning in 1984. Researchers were skeptical, so they tested her. They gave her random dates stretching back decades. What day of the week was September 19th, 1987? What was happening in the news around March 5th, 1991? She answered without hesitation. Then she added what she had been doing that day, what she was wearing, how she felt, and she was right, again and again. Brain imaging later revealed structural differences in areas associated with autobiographical memory and emotional processing, particularly regions surrounding the amygdala and temporal lobe. There were also unusual patterns in the caudate nucleus, a structure linked to habit formation and repetitive behaviors. But what made her case haunting wasn't the accuracy. It was the exhaustion. Jill described her memory not as a gift, but as a burden. She said her past was like a constant slideshow running in the background of her life. She didn't choose to recall things. They surfaced automatically. Painful arguments, rejection, grief, regret. The mind normally softens those edges over time. Hers didn't. For her, forgetting wasn't an option. Segment 2. Why forgetting is a feature, not a flaw. We tend to think of memory as a recording device. It isn't. It's reconstruction. Every time you recall a memory, your brain reassembles it. And in that reassembly, it edits. It smooths. It distorts. It weakens emotional intensity through a process called reconsolidation. This is not a bug in the system. It's psychological survival. Imagine if every heartbreak hit with the exact same force 10 years later. Imagine if every embarrassment carried the same flush of shame. You wouldn't grow. You'd stall. The hippocampus helps encode and retrieve memories. The prefrontal cortex evaluates their relevance. The amygdala tags them with emotional weight. Over time, unless a memory is repeatedly rehearsed or emotionally reinforced, it fades. This fading is mercy. But in hyperthymesia, autobiographical memory retrieval appears involuntary and unusually persistent. It's not about trying harder to remember. It's about not being able to stop remembering. Some researchers suspect that the caudate nucleus may play a critical role. This structure is involved in habits and repetitive thought patterns. In individuals with hyperthymesia, recalling the past may function almost like a mental habit loop, automatic, reinforced, self-perpetuating. It's important to understand something crucial. Hyperthymesia is not photographic memory. These individuals don't necessarily memorize textbooks or long strings of numbers with ease. Their intelligence levels vary. Their working memory is often average. The enhancement is specific. It's autobiographical. Their own lives are archived in extraordinary detail, and emotion fuels the archive. The more emotionally charged an event, the more indelible it becomes, which means trauma doesn't dissolve. It crystallizes. Segment 3. Memory as compulsion. There's another layer researchers have noticed. Many individuals with hyperthymesia exhibit traits similar to obsessive-compulsive tendencies. Not necessarily full OCD, but patterns of rumination and repetitive mental review. It's as if their brain is constantly organizing, indexing, replaying. One documented individual described their mind as having a split-screen effect. On one side, the present moment. On the other, a stream of past events corresponding to whatever the current date reminds them of. If today is February 16th, their mind automatically pulls up February 16th from years past. 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. They don't initiate the process. It initiates itself. And here's where the fantasy collapses. When we imagine perfect memory, we imagine advantage, power, control. But hyperthymesia doesn't grant emotional immunity. If anything, it amplifies emotional vulnerability. A breakup from 12 years ago doesn't feel distant. It feels recent, fresh, textured, immediate. You don't just remember the event. You relive the atmosphere, the tone of voice, the humidity in the air, the exact phrasing of words you wish had never been said. And because the memory remains vivid, the emotional charge can resurface with it. The human mind is designed to adapt, to heal by abstraction, to compress the past into manageable fragments. Hyperthymesia disrupts that compression. And without compression, the weight accumulates. Segment 4. Rarity, Mystery, and the Limits of Control. Fewer than 100 verified cases of hyperthymesia have been documented worldwide. That's astonishingly rare, which makes studying it difficult. Researchers still debate the origin. Is it genetic predisposition, developmental variation, a unique interaction between memory circuitry and emotional intensity, or a byproduct of subtle compulsive rehearsal over years? No single answer fully explains it. What's even stranger is the specificity. Hyperthymesia doesn't enhance semantic memory, general facts about the world, nor does it significantly boost procedural memory skills like riding a bike. It enhances episodic autobiographical memory, your life, your timeline, your internal documentary. This suggests that memory isn't one monolithic system. It's modular, specialized, distributed. And in hyperthymesia, one module appears hyperactive, not optimized, not refined, hyperactive, like a smoke alarm that doesn't just alert you to fire, but to every flicker of heat. Now imagine living with that level of recall for decades. Every regret cataloged, every mistake timestamped, every awkward silence preserved. You begin to see the paradox. Forgetting is not weakness, it is balance. Because memory without erosion becomes accumulation, and accumulation without limits becomes overload. The brain evolved to prioritize survival, not perfection. Hyperthymesia may look like cognitive superiority from the outside, but from the inside, it can feel like living in a house where every room contains a mirror, and every mirror reflects a different year of your life, simultaneously, unfiltered, unfading, and always accessible. Which raises a darker possibility. If remembering everything is this heavy, was forgetting the real gift all along? The twist in application. Now here's where this gets uncomfortable. You probably don't have hyperthymesia, but have you ever replayed a conversation from years ago, not because you wanted to, but because it just surfaced? Have you ever felt your chest tighten remembering something awkward you said in high school? Something no one else likely remembers, but your brain replays in perfect surround sound? Have you ever tried to fall asleep only for your mind to pull up a memory you buried? A mistake, a rejection, a moment you wish you could edit out of existence. That's a shadow of this condition. Your brain is wired to prioritize emotional memory. Painful experiences are tagged as important. They're stored with extra intensity because your mind believes they contain lessons, warnings, data for survival. But sometimes the brain overcorrects. Sometimes it replays not to protect you, but because it doesn't know when to stop. Rumination, intrusive thoughts, sudden waves of nostalgia that feel almost physical. These are the everyday echoes of hyperthymesia. Not as extreme, not as relentless, but built from the same machinery. The difference isn't whether you remember, it's how often, how vividly, and whether you can redirect your focus. Because the real question isn't whether remembering everything is possible, it's whether forgetting is one of the mind's most compassionate defenses. And if so, what happens when that defense weakens? If memory can trap you in the past, what happens when your brain starts creating memories that never even happened? False memories. Entire events you're certain occurred. Conversations you'd swear were real. What if your mind doesn't just refuse to forget? What if it lies? And that is why you need to watch the next videos.